Oh, done. Yeah, all right.
My elbow, and it's horrible.
Okay.
Getting your elbow tattooed is not fun.
You know what else would not be fun is getting your tattoo while watching a game like last night's Kings game.
Honestly, the pain might be a nice unnecessary distraction to have to.
Why is it so painful when it's the Kings? Minnesota's good. We know the Kings are kind of struggling this year. Why? And I'm one of them. Why is everybody having such a hard time with that game?
I think, well, with that game specifically, it's just because it was so embarrassing, and I think it was back-to-back home games where you just, outside of the first quarter, you never really had a chance in either of those games. Well, you didn't even look like you wanted to have a chance or you cared enough to have a chance, and that's always tough. But I think what's the most frustrating for a lot of people is obviously this city and this fan base has such a love and appreciation for Doug Christie as part of that glory era of Kings basketball, and we naturally all want to see him succeed, and he talks so much about unfinished business and how important it is to him to finish what they started in the late 90s and early 2000s. And I think what's at least the hardest part for that side of me and with the Kings fan background growing up, and a lot of Kings fans that I'm hearing talk about it, is like, we know what Doug is saying, and we believe Doug's message. We don't believe in the roster necessarily, but we believe in Doug's message. But Doug doesn't even seem to either want to or be able to hold his own standard. He talks so much about the defensive standard. The Sacramento Kings, this is how we're going to play. This is who we're going to be. It's non-negotiable. But the actions on the court don't, and in his rotations, don't support that standard that he speaks so passionately about.
Well, I think that would be impossible with this roster.
Right.
This roster is not capable of playing that way, which has been one of the biggest puzzlers of this whole season, going back to even before it started, with Doug saying we're going to be this and this and this. And you could look at the roster and go, they're not that. So what's going to give here?
Well, as a whole, yes, I agree with you. But there are players that seem to fit that image better that just simply aren't playing. And Keon Ellis is the name that comes to mind. He's the first guy that comes to mind here. It's like it doesn't make it – on paper, Keon Ellis is the exact type of player that Doug Christie talks about. And he is one of the most efficient three-point shooters on the team, shoots over 40% from three, again, did so all last year. And defensively, while I do understand that Keon gambles sometimes on defense and that leaves you to giving up easy buckets because it forces your defense into rotation, the results are there with Keon as an on-ball individual defender. So what's confusing Kings fans is if Keon Ellis plays last night, do the Sacramento Kings win?
No.
Probably not. But
no probably to it. They don't.
Well, yeah, they don't.
Yeah.
But why are we waiting until the fourth quarter to put Keon Ellis out there when your message is defense, defense, defense? You have your starting point guard who's not playing a lick of defense along with the rest of the roster who's not known for playing defense, and you have Keon that's sitting there right there on the bench going, I should be the guy that's getting this opportunity right now.
Here's the only explanation that makes sense to me, and this is just me, my observation. No one has told me anything about this. First of all, to your point about Keon, it's very difficult for us as fans to know really if someone's a good defender or not. Even the metrics are kind of a mixed bag. But as I said earlier, with Keon, you can see it, the eye test. Even the average fans, casual fans, like, he's a good defender. All of the defensive box plus minus, good. Defensive rating, good. So he's a good defender on a team that doesn't have many. That's a given. So then why is it that a team that doesn't defend is not playing one of their better defenders? The only thing that makes sense to me is that you know what you have in him. And I say you, I mean Scott Perry, the front office, and Doug Christie. You've got some guys that you would like to be able to move at some point. They're not part of your long-term future. Keon ostensibly is. So you want to play the guys that are going to have a chance. You're going to showcase guys that you'd rather move. Keon, I'm not showcasing because I want to keep him. I don't know if that's true, but it's the only thing that makes a lick of sense to me.
Well, then you're catastrophically failing in multiple areas in that sense, because I don't know anybody who's watching the Kings play basketball right now and going, that's an asset that I want on my basketball team, at least the pieces that you want to move. Maybe Malik Monk, right. Malik's been playing well, so maybe it's okay, but I don't think Keon Ellis, we'd expect Keon to take minutes away from Malik Monk. The other aspect of that is, if you do view Keon Ellis as your long-term future, and the conversations that I've had within that organization are that it's not that they don't like Keon or they don't believe Keon can be a part of the long-term fit. They do. They're not going to overpay for him and get in a bidding war against themselves to keep him, but they would like him around long-term. But Keon is the one that has the decision. We're not talking about a restricted free agent here. And if you tick him off over the course of this process because you have to showcase other people, oh, Keon, we love you so much, but we're not actually going to play you when you seem to fit the style of basketball we want because we have to make sure Dennis Schroeder and DeMar DeRozan and all these other guys, these veterans, are happy. If I'm Keon, I'm looking around and going, what? Like, do you value me, or can I go and join the Milwaukee Bucks, the Minnesota Timberwolves, a team that could use a defender like me that's actually going to be playing basketball in May?
So you don't think that they are showcasing others? You don't buy that as part of the situation? I mean, again, while you ponder that, you might have been the one that asked the question last night to Doug Christie about Keon, and he starts out with Keon, and he's kind of couching it like, we'll figure it out. The league works these things out, which to me suggested maybe somebody gets moved. I don't know. But then he goes back to, hey, if you can defend, you're going to play. Well, he can defend, so how come he's not playing?
Yeah, I think there is some validity to the showcasing. I also think there's, the main move that new general manager Scott Perry has done, he is not to blame for a vast majority of this roster. But Dennis Schroeder was his move.
Yeah.
And he spoke about Dennis Schroeder, and Doug Christie spoke about Dennis Schroeder as, we finally have a point guard in the building. We didn't have one after the De'Aaron Fox trade. We finally have him. And here's a guy who can be an extension of me on the floor. Here's a guy that is defense first and can pick up 94 feet and will handle the basketball and will be the tip of the spear of how we want to play. And he's playing terribly. And if he's the first guy that I'm taking out and putting Russell Westbrook in, who signed a week before the season started, I'm somewhat admitting my own failure a little bit.
Yeah.
It would be the same way that if Monty McNair last season and the Kings last season had moved DeMar DeRozan or Zach LaVine to the bench after the De'Aaron Fox trade because you're admitting the star that we went out and got isn't good. So I do think there's like a human element to that, but I don't buy that the Sacramento, we see scouts in the Golden One Center all the time that come through to watch the Sacramento Kings play. The blueprint to how to beat the Kings is obvious to every team. They all know how to do it. You pack the paint and dare them to beat you from three-point range, and then defensively just push them around. Every team is looking at the Sacramento Kings. They know what they have, and I don't think anybody is going to look at the Kings and go, well, I'm glad that Dennis Schroeder played 28 minutes a night. I know he's a capable point guard for my team. No. We know you're talking about veterans and guys that are the third oldest roster in the league. We're not talking about 24-year-olds who we don't know what their ceiling is. Most of these players who the Kings are going to look to trade, we know who they are in the league. So showcasing them in a blowout game against the Thunder or the Minnesota Timberwolves, I don't think that moves the needle for anybody.
Does it maybe, again, I'm just, grabbing at straws myself, watching that, trying to figure it out. If you're going to move these guys, you want them to put up numbers.
Sure.
I don't know.
Sure.
Domas last night, we know he has at least a contusion. I personally suspect it may be worse than that, but then no one's told me that. He at least we know he has sore ribs, and he's grabbing there either at the ribs or at whatever he's wearing over it. And, it'd be nice to see Maxime Reynaud play a little bit. But no, Domas is playing major minutes. When you have 2 more games in the next couple of days, why are they just trying to get Domas a chance to put up his numbers? I don't know. I was scratching my head over that.
I don't know if they're showcasing Domas to trade because I don't know if they can trade Domas. Realistically, we're talking about Domantas Sabonis might have the worst contract in the NBA right now with the way he's playing and how much he's being paid. And that's a real bummer because he got that contract because he was part of the Beam team finally turning everything around, right? So I think it's a combination of everything, Whitey, essentially is what we're getting at. And there is no correct answer because there really is nothing correct about this Sacramento Kings team right now.